Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Best Fleets podcast. This month, Trish and I are joined by Crawford Trucking. In with us today is Abby Ryan, company controller, and Gregg Ryan, president, owner. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. We're honored to be here.
We're honored to be here, yes.
I'm excited about this because doing a little bit of research, Trish, I know you and I were going through some of the things that these folks have been doing this year, and the reasons that they landed, in the Best Fleets program the way that they did is super clear. I'm pretty excited.
Definitely. Lots and lots of new programs that we hadn't heard about before from them. But let's start with tell us who Crawford Trucking is.
We're a fleet of 60 drivers based out of Des Moines, Iowa. Uh, the Crawford family is big within our culture. So it's very much a family operation. We operate what's, I guess, referred to oftentimes as a hub and spoke. We go in and out of central Iowa. We're not like a lot of large companies that are trying to serve a nationwide customer base. We try to focus on a customer base that has an interest of either going out of or coming back into central Iowa. And that helps us to serve our drivers home time needs, their mileage and their home time needs best. That's not to say that all of our drivers live right here in Iowa, but generally speaking, we try to hire them in places that we have lane density to serve their home time needs best.
Perfect. And tell us about what each of you two do there.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. As Gregg Ryan, he's my father, and I'm the controller by title, but I hope to one day be able to fill into his role. So I take a lot of different roles on to learn more about the company, little avenues, and I think that's one thing that really helps too with being the replacement one day is being able to have going through this review, you kind of see like things that we hadn't done or projects that we should implement. It helps to be able to get in front of that and say, hey, I really think this would be a great thing for our company. So I get to have that little bit of insight, but I mainly deal with the finances on a day-to-day and make sure everything's running smoothly, in and out, all that fun stuff.
In addition to that, she's selling herself a little bit short because from the time she was 16 years old, she's handled all of our marketing.
Yes.
She's very, very integral part of our communications. As far as our social events coordinator, she handles all that, and in addition to that, she has a lot of responsibility for anything technical, so our computer network and all of that. She's got a big part.
So I keep busy, but I try to make sure I have a knowledge in every little place. So.
And
Yeah.
I guess I left out, she has really been the one that's been behind the Best Fleets initiative. Originally, I saw the Best Fleets program as an opportunity to make us a better company. And I believe this is our third year. And in each year, the initiative or the desire was, hey, if we won, that's a wonderful thing, but is to help us be a better company. And in year number two, she made it a very much I want to get in. I want to win in year three, and she has really been a driving force throughout the organization to help us improve because one of the things that she brought to the table when she started working full-time in the company, she graduated from the University of Iowa 2 years ago, is she had pointed out that I had become.
I put it as he's become a little bit complacent. He's now becoming the old guy of the industry, which I like to prefer us to keep up on the front, try to find new things the things we're doing were great, but there's little things that we can add to them to make it even better and like the workplace to keep growing with like what's you're seeing for the trends and
I think it was after one of her first interactions with the Best Fleets process that she came to me and she says, the best way I can explain it to you is the things you're doing are good, Dad, but they're just not enough anymore. And she really, really opened my eyes to that.
But you've been the owner of the company for
We purchased the company in 2005. At that time, it wasn't going to be able to go on, and it had, I believe, 7 drivers and 7 trucks. And yes, we've been very, very blessed. I have a business partner who is now retired that we bought it together. We grew it up to about 45 trucks in a couple of years, and at that point in time, I really stopped and focused on quality over quantity. I wanted to be better, not necessarily bigger. And then we've stayed in that 45 to 50 to 55 to 60 and just kind of very, very gradually grown. But one of our largest concerns, one of my largest concerns was I didn't want to lose our identity through growth. And that for my standpoint, what makes this work and makes this special is I personally know our drivers, our office and shop employees. I know our customers. I know our vendors. And, our business is built on relationship. So.
This is amazing. The two of you represent a kind of formula that we've seen in a bunch of other fleets that have done well in the program, and that's having one foot in understanding the industry intimately, and then the other one is someone who's a spark, someone who's really going to put a burr under the saddle and just shake things up, and have both of you on screen right now it perfectly encapsulates. And so I think you answered one of the questions I was going to ask, which was the interviewer who interviewed you, this year had said your questionnaire, your answers was head and shoulders above what it was the previous year. And I wanted to ask what was it that sparked that change? But maybe we have the answer. Maybe the answer is just
So
it transitioned from she interviewed me the first time to
the first year we're involved. I don't even think I wasn't here full time yet, but I don't even think it was completed. Then the second year was the time I got involved and I finished it. We were like a finalist and everything, but I was like, oh, we did great. This was just my first experience with it and I was trying to learn with it. Like you said, I was more of interviewing him to like help me get a grasp of all the questionnaires, and I knew how to interact with the drivers to get their like interviews, like help from them. And so then when I didn't get it, I was like, oh, what did I do wrong? Like, I feel like we're a really great company. So not that we're doing anything wrong. It's just the simple fact of like learning to do better each year. So that after we didn't get in last year, I was like, I'm going to figure out what I have to do to like make sure we're in it. So I went to like every webinar. I like would research what these other companies were doing. I saw who was the best fleets. I would go see what they're doing. I was like, I want to know like what I don't have that they have. And it wasn't necessarily much that we didn't have, but like putting it in full terms of writing and like establishing the programs that we have, but they weren't necessarily like set in stone, like here's what we are doing. We were just doing it. That's just how had it, but just like setting it in stone and getting like our story told even better, because I think I lacked being able to tell our story intimately. And I think this year I was able to like really spend a lot of time and like making sure like our story was told. Our culture is super important to us. Like it's family over like time after time. Like we don't just have a driver, like they're part of our Crawford family. Like we know about their families. We want to learn more about them. Like, so being able to tell that story like more intimately and like just learning what other people were doing. And one of the big things that we added this year was we call it the DAC. It's the Driver Advisory Committee. We don't have it as like a board. It's just we have it as a committee. And that was one thing I hadn't heard of, but he had heard of previously. And I was like, we have to get one of those. Like, I think this will be great. So we made sure to get that implemented and rolling. And it's been like a great thing for our company. And it was like, it felt like silly to like make it an official thing. Cause it like, we'd been doing stuff like that. It's just, we never had an actual committee. And that made a big difference for people to feel like they had a place like they really belonged and they serve like a higher purpose than just being a driver. Having that title really made a difference to them. So just learning that like things that we were doing to like make it more established and like well known around the company, because hey, we do these practices, but people may not know that we're doing it or why we're doing it. So I think that really helped to like full circle it.
Couple of things I'd like to mention that also changed. I mean, I'd be the first one to say that Abby is really what she's brought that spark to the organization. She also challenged me to be more along with her. It's part of helping develop the next generation of leadership, but to be a lot more involved within the industry, industry trade groups, industry conferences. We were involved in a small carrier university to try to learn, you know, how do we become a better corporate citizen, better employer, better trucking company, so on and so forth. There was something else. Oh, as far as the driver advisory committee, prior to it, the nature of our business is our drivers have the opportunity to be through here physically in our office on pretty close a weekly basis. Depending on if they run out west, maybe it's 8 or 9 days. But they're here regularly. So for years, they've always had a direct line to me for feedback and things like that. And that was certainly good. But the thing that I recognize as the driver advisory committee goes, it made it a little bit more official. And it potentially gave people that didn't feel comfortable coming to me directly an avenue to ask questions or have discussions. One of the best stories that I like about the driver advisory committee or driver advisory board was as we were reaching out to the individuals to be a part of it, a couple of them asked me, they were very apprehensive. They said, well, it all depends on, you know, what you're trying to do with this. And I laughed. I said, well, that's for us to figure out together. And so they've had a lot of input into what it should be about.
Yeah.
But predominantly, what I approached them is I said, I want our drivers to feel and to have a direct voice in some of the larger decisions that are being made, so that you know you earnestly feel that you have input. And I also use it as a kind of a pseudo board of directors, so to speak, because I'll reach out to them as I've got things that are weighing heavily on my mind for input from them, and that has been invaluable.
That's remarkable. One of the things that we talk about in the program, and this will come up at the at our event in Charlotte, is that there tend to be three kinds of companies. Right? They fall into three categories. Companies that do things to their drivers, companies that do things for their drivers, and companies that do things with their drivers. And I feel like you've really captured that third category there.
That's what we want to be.
Amazing.
Now, there's some of your programs that really stand out where it's very much doing it together. So if we could touch on a couple of those, because I think that's where other companies can learn from what you're doing also. Okay. Do you mind talking a little bit about how you select new technology?
Do you want to take the lead on it?
Just to start with it, this year recently we had like a huge change. We switched from one vendor to another for our safety,
for our telematics, telematics.
And so the starting ball with that was we had been to numerous conferences. We're getting set up.
Well, the starting was negative feedback from our drivers and having problems with the onboard electronic log device.
So then we went out to start to learn more about what's there to be offered and hearing what other companies are doing, learning what their like fail safes are or what their drivers hate too. So it helps to learn like what people have already tried. And then we went to conferences, heard what people had to say there, and then we started to talk to our drivers, said, hey, like this is what we've been seeing. Like, have you heard anything from your like friends of yours? Like getting even further feedback to then narrow it down to a selection. And then after the selection, we start to talk to them about, hey, like, how do you think is a good way to start this process? And you had a good hand in that.
And ultimately, we started with a small test group to see how that went, and before rolling it out to everybody. but overall we've had very, very good feedback. But it started with a growing frustration within our organization.
It gets hard because, not everyone's always on board with a new technology change. That's just kind of how it goes. Some people like to just stick with one thing and they're just going to ride it out until they can. But, trying to get everyone on board is definitely something difficult. But getting feedback from the small group of drivers to start with and having them actually like performance test it to make sure like, hey, it isn't meeting all of our requirements that we need to like better help our drivers. And
well, it was our former electronic logging. I can never remember if it's EOBR or AAO, the acronym, but they were having problems with them not working and locking up and freezing up, and the support our drivers were getting just from the provider was not adequate. So when we went with the new provider, Abby's right. There was a lot of frustration with what they had, but there was some apprehension about change. So there were some people that made a lot of great recommendations, and there were people that were like, "We know what we know," and so we were very, very cognizant of that, taking people through change. Everybody had individualized one-on-one training, and the feedback afterwards has really been positive. And what I mean by that, sometimes when asked if there's any problems, I go, no. And so the change was good. Yes, but and there are others who go, this is great. This is great.
That's it's a tough balancing act because when anytime you've got something new, when someone has a problem with it, either they have a problem with it because they're just not used to it, or they've got a problem with it because there's a legitimate problem with it.
mm-hmm.
And figuring out which one of those it is, being able to thread that needle can be very, very difficult. But it seems like starting with a focus group, right? Work out the kinks and take it from there. And then you said something that absolutely captures perfectly what the right approach is: taking people through change. It's not forcing change on people. It's not shoving them through the door. It's taking them through it together.
We did a lot of one-on-one training with it too, because some people it's harder to make the change than others. So we wanted to make sure that like, hey, like we're in full understanding here. We're not gonna just throw you out there and say, hey, figure it out. Like there was a lot of like one-on-one time, and there's a lot of patience on both sides figuring out like how to make it work best for everybody.
One of the things that is very important to me as the leader of the organization is that people understand why it is we want to do the things that we do. In every aspect of our business, it's very, very important that we're always explaining why it is that we want to do what we do. I find two things. First one is it generates a lot more buy-in and satisfaction, but at the same time, it also helps drive continuous improvement. Because sometimes we may not, as the management team, we may not see the full perspective. And the more people that we can have a conversation with about why it is we believe we need to do what it is we're proposing to do, it really does broaden the perspective.
And then let me check my notes here. I feel like you do something in particular. It's the how we doing calls, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That is a very, very big part of our culture, actually. As people are coming through the office, I make a point to engage them and say, how are we doing? But that goes beyond just how are you doing? How are we doing? I know a lot of people's family structure, grandkids' names, spouses' names. I'm not real good with the dates. But most of the times, I earnestly engage them and look for feedback. And I think for the most part, they all know that if there's a problem, I earnestly go and try to resolve it. But if you had the chance to interact with our drivers, they would tell you I have kind of a catchphrase that goes with it as I'm interacting with the folks and through the grace of God, they're telling me things are going good. I always chuckle. I says, well, you know what my job is, don't you? And they look at me kind of funny and says, it's not screw that up. So they all know that is my objective, to find what works and to stay with it as long as it works. And when I use that caveat, as long as it works, always looking for improvement. Is there a better way? Is there a better way to serve one another?
Right.
So
sounds like you're kind of a snowplow. So like you're going to push things out of people's way so that they can run smoother. And sometimes there's no snow, so you can just kind of ride along and
most of the time there's no snow, and I like it that way. But if there is,
so,
yeah.
If there is, yeah, absolutely. There are, I don't know, Trish, did you have one or?
Well, there's still so many things I want to ask about.
No.
So, you talked about training folks when you changed providers, but you also do a lot of ongoing training. And you don't just do it in one manner. It's not just online and that's it. You offer training in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. I think it's important to know that like you're dealing with a lot of different generations too. So I think that's really important to hone into. Because like if you ask me how the best way to train, it's gonna be far different than how you ask him to train. So I think it's important to like get them involved in numerous different ways. You may not reach them on all of them, but it's like having that open communication of like what works best with what. I think our most effective one still to the day is like the one-on-one. Just like if you're having an issue or we get like an alert on their safety score, we have a one-on-one with them. It's not like a classroom style. We don't want them to like feel like they're getting in trouble or anything, but it's just that open conversation and say, hey, like this is what we saw, like here's what we could do better, like what's your intake on it, like here's what we're doing. And then we have coaching too available if they want to go with that avenue. And then we also have our safety quarterly things. And it's
that's more of a distance learning.
Yeah.
With I believe most of the time we're using the 10th Street products.
Yep.
Otherwise, there'll be a link to a video with some questions afterwards, and then there's a little bit of pay that's associated with that for their time. And then, of course, we have the driver meetings. And as we're preparing for this, I told Abby, I says, what I found was successful many years ago is generally people get apprehensive about attending a safety meeting or a driver meeting. And I always tell people it's a great time of fellowship where we, kind of sprinkle in a little bit of an agenda here and there. But, and that's what I learned early on is it's really a great time of fellowship for them. So a lot of times it'll be about safety, but it's also a lot of times where the drivers will talk about topics that come up that really help one another learn from their experiences. Before winter, we had a
winter refresher course. So
on.
You're not required to come to anything. We don't want to make it a forced thing. Like we hope everyone comes, but obviously not everything works out that way. But we had made sure all of our new entrants came to our winter refresher course, so they learn how to throw chains if needed. We don't prefer that you ever have to throw chains. We'd rather you just have sit because we believe it's more safe, but we want them to be prepared for any scenario that they're thrown. So having that little refresher course, hands-on activities so they can see it. We had our veteran drivers there to talk about their winter experiences, just being able to like prepare them for things that they're going to see in the future.
Also, things that maybe a new entrant wouldn't think about is the warm clothes, the food, the water in the truck, certain things that they need to make sure have been done to their truck to make sure it's ready for winter. Part of it is making sure that they know that they have to keep a certain amount of fuel treatment. Just it's available to everybody. For the new entrants, it's I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but none of them have complained about being brought in for the refresher there. The other thing I guess I should mention too is our operations manager is in his first career was a teacher. And from there, he went on to be a driver trainer, and he was actually an instructor at at our local community college for the truck driving program. So he's just a phenomenal part of ongoing driver training. We feel so blessed that he's a part of our organization, but he certainly helps recognize if there are some issues that come up that maybe somebody might be struggling with, and it starts with a casual conversation in most cases.
We use that with our countermeasures too. We have him work with the driver so they can learn what is the better technique to use instead of, or even preventative.
Anytime that we have a violation citation, or a preventable accident within our organization, we have what's referred to as countermeasures. And it's just a time of learning, you know.
They usually have like a specific video to watch with it. They talk with the individual about it. And if needed, we'll do a road test just so they can work on the techniques with somebody, just to make sure, you know, like I said, certain people learn certain ways. So just being able to encompass like a lot of different ways, I think is really valuable to our drivers.
Rick, did you catch what I caught there?
What's it?
They just said something that I loved. Here is what I saw. It's not about being punitive, it's about the coaching, the development. And it's not punitive at all. It's all about enhancing their skills.
It's a learning opportunity.
I think that's one of the things that really set the best fleets apart from everyone else, is that it's about not pointing fingers. It's about developing together. It's about learning. Loved hearing that.
Absolutely. There's also a big on, you know, we are concerned about everybody's safety. Our drivers, we want them to come home to their family safely. We want the motoring public around our vehicles to feel safe. So, and that in itself is a big part of our culture. And you're right, it's not punitive in any way, shape, or form. It's just, how do we become safer and to serve one another better?
Excellent.
So there's something that jumped out at me, and
Yes.
there are a couple of priorities that show up in the questions of this questionnaire, and they have to do with dealing with natural disasters and cybersecurity. And what I found historically is a lot of the finalists, a lot of companies in the industry, when they think about natural disasters, they think about, you know, having a backup plan at the terminal. They think about, you know, keeping the business running, which is important, but they forget about the drivers during the natural disaster. Same with cybersecurity. When we ask folks, you know, do you do cybersecurity training? Oh yeah, we train everyone in the office, and then dead silence, right? But you don't. In both those cases, you are also bringing in the drivers in when it comes to dealing with those problems. Was it always that way, or was that kind of a light bulb moment where you're like,
it's always been like we knew that, like that's what we did. But I think when you answer so many questions on here, I remember the first year when I looked at what I said for the previous year's answers, it was the same thing, the same thought process going through. It was like, oh, cybersecurity, yeah, of course we have cybersecurity, but then I didn't take into account all the things that we also have for on the road. Like I didn't consider a fuel safety thing to be cyber. But then when I was sitting listening to webinars and stuff, and I was like, you know what, like we do that. Like why didn't that come to like fruition and stuff? So we've always done it, but we really secured our natural disaster plan recently, and it was to hone into like it's so much more important for our driver's safety than anything, regardless of where they're at. We want to make sure like they're safe as well
and they feel comfortable. The best way that I could answer this is it's always been a part of our culture. We have done a better job of formalizing it here in recent years. And what I see is the real value of the formalization is you got 50 to 60%, at least I feel this, that you have very high visibility within our drivers. 50 to 60% of our driving teammates or family members. You have high visibility, but that 30 to 40% that are quieter and may not ask questions, and you may not know what they do or what they don't know exactly, by formalizing it and communicating it in a more consistent and structured manner is where we've really had the light bulb moment, so to speak.
And for like our cybersecurity specific, we had this fuel problem, Jonah.
Yeah, I was going to say that a lot of that's been driven by need. I'm very, very proud to say we were part of a pilot program with the LUBS organization with a dual authentication for the fuel cards. So the first step of security we have as it pertains to that is as I understand, in many cases, the drivers don't even need to use their fuel card if it's read the RFID off their truck. And if it, for whatever reason, it didn't read the RFID that's specific to their truck, then we use dual authentication, which is they put the card in, and then they wait for a text message to be sent to them that verifies it's them. And once that's been done, that is a safe transaction. In addition to that, though, we do make the information that we receive available to our drivers of things to be careful of with phishing. Is that the right term I use? Phishing scams and things like that, so that they can better prepare to protect themselves also when they're out there on the road.
And we always make sure, because I know like one of the common ones you see, especially because I work in the accounting portion of this too, is like people trying to change your bank account and stuff.
Yes.
So obviously, like when drivers on the road, they're not here. So like people may try to like reach out via email, but we always make sure to follow up with a phone call. We don't want them to get caught in a phishing scheme. And we've also noted that like, hey, we're also not going to send you an email stating something like this. So we'll always feel free to call us if you're ever getting something weird. We're going to call you if you even request the information at all. So we just want to make sure no one falls into that. It's easy to.
We
but
will have
It is.
verbal communication followed up by electronic communication, so that people
sign documentation as well, so that we're all on the same page. No one feels they're getting taken advantage of somehow by the phishing scheme. So we just want to like try to be out in front of it, because you know it's hard when you're not here all the time. You're out on the road. Like there's business to have to take care of when you're not here. So we know that, and we try to put our best foot forward so we don't get caught into one of those situations.
On any given week, there'll be 5 to 10 emails that originated from what looks like my email telling people to do things that I would never tell them to do. But in that aspect, I had to integrate a policy with them that, you know, I put right in my emails, please come see me with any questions. But in most cases, I run down there and say, okay, this really was for me, because there was a time that our bank called us, and they said that the person who did our accounting at that time had authorized initiated a $27,000 wire. And momentarily, I thought to myself, I was busy and pulled in different directions. And momentarily, I thought to myself, well, she knows what she's doing, and I was going to, you know, and it dawned on me from, give me just a minute. I said, I'll need to call you back. I walked next door. I said, hey, I got a call from the bank, this and other thing. She looks at me and she says, well, it's email you sent me. Oh my goodness. So that's where we really went with the verbal and electronic of things of if we're dealing with somebody's personal information or a relatively significant financial transaction like that.
Dodged a bullet.
Smart.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So there is a story that's told about drivers, and in a number of senses, it has some truth to it, that traditionally drivers have not been great about future financial planning, right? So I want my paycheck now, that's it. And we see it changing in certain parts of the industry, in other parts not so. But if I'm correct, you've got sort of a more robust a retirement plan for drivers. Is that the case?
Absolutely. First of all, our retirement savings has had no vesting. On the day that our contributions are made, that's 100% their money. But we do 3% match for the first 3%, and then we do 50 cents on the dollar for 4 and 5%. So we match up to 4% of the retirement savings.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and is that new-ish, or has it?
Well, we started in 2022 with this program.
Prior, being a small company, we first started off with simple IRAs, where we'd set up a simple IRA for everybody. And at that time, we did the 3% match. It wasn't until we got away from the simple IRA and went to a standardized 401k that this method was introduced to us, which at the time we felt great. I felt great about that. In addition, I didn't know, but we have people who have the option to either make it a Roth or a non-Roth, and that in itself is certainly tremendous. The other thing is what made us decide to go from the simple IRA to the 401k was the support that we have. We actually have somebody from Principal that talks with each one of our people that are hired about retirement savings and whatnot. So
Really?
When we switched over to this plan, like you could see the numbers like increase a lot too. And I think that helps specifically that we had somebody that is willing to call about this, and that helps a lot. And just getting to know all these other little things. Like within that, you have a portal you can use, you can set up a will,
free.
all free. So you
Principal offers
yeah.
a array of free services to our
Mhm.
drivers. And the one that I remember the most is I tell people, you know, if they offer free will. But there's other things that they provide too. I would say the portal, they do a very, very good job of introducing to them, make it user friendly. Plus, they have this individual's telephone number and they can have open conversations with him or his team if they have questions. Like, you know, when the stock market wasn't doing so good, I know he was a rather popular guy, was getting some calls with some questions and whatnot like that. And
it definitely helps that he's so willing to speak on the phone with people, because again, with like the upcoming generations and stuff, a lot of people only use email, which I happen to accidentally fall into that as well. But this individual is really good about calling each driver, which is super helpful for the drivers, because obviously they're on the road, they can't be on their phone. So I think that is really beneficial to them as well.
You know, we hear often in best fleets, well, I'm a smaller fleet, I can't do that. Well, I can't have the robust programs that other fleets have. But that certainly is not the case there at all, is it?
No.
we try not to. I try to pay attention to what the industry leaders are doing. And, you know, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I've always looked at how do I keep ourselves as what I would call a tier one or a best fleet. And generally speaking, if you were to hear talk about something that is within our organization, is how do we operate as efficiently or as fiscally responsible as possible to then return that to the people that work here. And that is a big part of our culture. So thank you. I take that as a true compliment.
Oh, well, it was absolutely meant as one. Reading through everything from how you structure your new entrance programs to your drivers' meetings, even social activities.
Mm-hmm.
You really have a focus on your people.
Yes, we do. We do.
And that comes through in all of your programs.
Well, thank you. I take that as one of the best compliments anybody can ever pay us. As far as the social events, Abby is I gotta give her credit there. She's done things like ugly sweater contest and
Chili cook-off contest.
Chili cook-off contest, and
I really try to learn what all my friends do. Obviously, they're not working in trucking, but just hearing even like outside the industry, what people do for fun, like for their company outings and stuff. And I think it's important to like learn from all different avenues, because like just listening and hearing like little things, I'm like, you know, that's kind of a cool idea. So I like try to recreate it or make it better to fit like our needs. So I think it's really important to like just sit and listen to other people, and that's a huge like a gain, honestly.
Done on Fridays because there's a much higher percentage of our drivers that are able to be through here on Fridays, because there's a number of our drivers that are home on the weekends. So that's one of the things that's always a challenge is figuring out how to include as many of our drivers in things as we can. So strategic scheduling of some of those things. Christmas party is a big deal as far as getting it scheduled so that as many people as possible can attend.
Well, there's the phrase of the day, trying to include drivers in as many things as possible, not just social events, but in everything that you do.
Yeah.
So true.
What do you think, Trish?
Well, I think that you deserved your spot.
Thank you.
We
hope to keep earning it.
Very, very hard to come back. One of the things I was telling
Abby is
we do. We are so excited to be here, and we are going to continue what we did right from the beginning, and that is to keep learning from others on how to continually get better. And so we consider it an honor. I noticed one of the things that was on something Abby had here is how have we been impacted since? And you know, I'll say in ways I would not necessarily have thought of, and that is the sense of pride that is in our fleet among, and this doesn't resonate for me because I'm very, very humble from the standpoint of one of the things is I don't know. I have people that have been with me for 15. One of my drivers has been here since we bought the company, but they could be here 10, 15, 18, 19 years, and they'll say, well, you know, I'm not going anywhere. And just about every one of them will tell you what my response is to that is, I'll never take that for granted. Absolutely never take that for granted because it keeps me working to serve you.
Yeah. A lot of our drivers like to come in and say now, well, we always knew we were the best, but at least everybody else knows too. And we're like, we love to hear that because we like to think we're the best too, humbly, of course, but we're glad that we officially have the title. But yeah, they're always like, long time coming. And we're like, well, we're glad you think so too. So
they want stickers for their trucks. They want shirts that say it, but their sense of pride in the fact of almost our secrets out, and now others know what we've always known type thing, and it just absolutely warms my heart.
It is well deserved.
Thank you.
Abby and Greg, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a joy. I really it's nice to see that the energy and insight and passion that you bring to your company, and we're very honored that you joined the program, and not at all shocked given everything you said that you placed in the way that you did. So thank you so much. Trish, what do you think? We get everything?
Absolute pleasure to speak with both of you.
Thank you for having us and letting us share our story with you.
We are honored to be here and are going to work very, very hard to get to do this in years to come.
We're going to hold you to it.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.